Welcome to the Papers Podcast. I'm putting on my podcast voice for this. This is where we read the medical education literature so you don't have to. You can just think about it after we tell you what you should think. Not really. Anyway, here am I, Linda, along with the usual suspects, John.
Hi, everybody.
Jason.
Hi, everybody.
And Lara has chosen something with giant words and lots of them. Tell us about it, Lara.
Thank you, Linda. I am really excited to talk about this today because one of the things that I have been wrestling with as of late is the concept of professional identity formation. I've been asked to give a talk and I've been doing a lot of reading, and for a long time I've been feeling like the work around PIF, professional identity formation, PIF, it hasn't been working for me. I wanted to pick a manuscript today to help me think differently about PIF, or at least help me to, try to put a label on what's bothering me about it. And I wanted to broaden our collective horizons a bit, because we always go to the peer-reviewed journal, but not today. Today, friends, we all went to a book. It's a hardcover book published in 2022. The editors of the book are Megan Brown, Mario Veen, Gabrielle Finn. If you don't know those three people, I highly recommend you look them up on the internet, on the Twitter, on the wherever you happen to go on the social media. They are epic. They are fantastic scholars, going to change the universe. And the book is called Applied Philosophy for Health Professions Education, A Journey Towards Mutual Understanding. And I knew this book was going to be fabulous because that title, Applied Philosophy for HPE, this is unbelievable. So I picked a chapter out of this fabulous book. And the chapter is authored by Ver and Van Broek. And I apologize right now for massacring both of your last names. I'm sorry about that. Your chapter is entitled Subjectification in Health Professions Education, Why We Should Look Beyond the Idea of Professional Identity Formation. Oh, right? This was exactly what I needed. So I want to start by asking you three your reflections on PIF. Maybe there's something about the way we've been discussing it in literature that doesn't sit right with you. Do you have something niggling at you? Maybe you want to tell me what PIF has been doing in MedEd that you think is really great. That's fine too. But let's start with Linda, because I know you've done some writing on this. Jason, because I think you'll have an opinion. And we'll end with John, because really, he's going to have to say something. So.
Well, first of all, Jason always has his opinion, whether or not he should.
It's so true.
And yeah, you're right. I've been sort of a minor author on a couple of things, but I certainly have been inculcated, if not infected, by the thoughts of my colleagues here at McGill, Richard Cruz, Sylvia Cruz, Yvonne Steiner, Robert Stearns, Don Boudreau, in thinking about PIF as socialization. And for me, it makes sense. Maybe just my concrete kind of somewhat linear mind that you have an identity, you do things that interact with that, and you come out with not only your personal identity, but as well a professional identity. And it's relatively simple and straightforward. Obviously, there's a lot of other things that go into it, like being brought into a community of practice. But it makes sense to me. And I think it's now making sense to lots of people.
I jump in there and say that, first of all, I just want to go back to where you used the word book and John had a small seizure, because John always teases me about the value of the most amazing invention called the book, but that's all right, John. So actually, I think back to PIF, I think PIF is a revelation. It's mind-blowing for me. I find it a very useful way of thinking about teaching and learning differently. So a new paradigm that says it's not three-dimensional. We're not just helping people with knowledge, skills, and attitudes in some way, and not teaching so people instantly absorb it. We move way beyond that to learning and development. Like, what a wonderful constructivist view of the world. I find it fascinating that it's both an individual's journey and a socialization journey. So I just think PIF's a pretty powerful, attractive concept. I'm not sure that our field has resolved what to do with it yet. I'm not sure that many of us design differently yet. It's coming.
So we're not reviewing a book, we're reviewing a book chapter. So this is, I think what we're reviewing is a narrative review. I'm okay with that. It just bothers me that it's going to be hard to access for the Papers Podcast audience, because it's comes as you, like I was able to find a digital copy through my institution, but I'm not sure if everyone will have the same access. And so I roll my eyes when I see stuff that's hard to get past paywalls. And I guess that's true of some of the literature as well.
True of a lot of journals, right?
Chip. Yeah. That's where the eye rolling is coming, because I think there's some really cool stuff in here. Now, you asked me the question about PIF. I think it's a really important phenomenon because I'm seeing, to me at least, there's these two parallel themes that are pretty predominant in the literature right now, which is the idea of burnout and the idea of power. And I think that is a reflection in how people are, how our learners are transitioning and starting to build their identity. And it's because we're framing it in a way of how do you accommodate yourself within the social structure that we currently have. And that's what I've always bothered me. We've always said, how are you normalizing as a physician or as a physiotherapist or as a radiation tech into the system with which you work? How are you changing yourself? Because our system doesn't give a lot of agency to each of us. We have to mold ourselves to fit rather than having some agency in terms of how we might perceive and know ourselves. And that's what's been bugging me. I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. This narrative review actually helped me understand a way of seeing and articulating what that challenge is. So the part that's bugging me got unpacked even further by this. So thanks for finding this. I actually like this more than I thought. I love the applied philosophy because I love reading a little philosophy here and there. But dear listener, don't imagine that this is something to knock off on your commute.
Yeah.
You need a giant venti coffee to get through her.
Okay, so I'm going to throw it to you in a sec, Linda. I have to first make a comment to Jason, who said I was long-winded in one of the previous recordings. I would just like to suggest you take a timestamp on the whatever that was that John just did. So go ahead, Linda.
Lara,
I like how we're all picking on John today. That's so awesome.
Well, it's today. It's just today.
well, I like picking on John. Why not? Lara, you said that ideas about PIF were bugging you, but you didn't say why they were bugging you. John, in fact, in his long-winded way, did. Was it the same thing for you or something else?
I don't know. I quit listening to John about halfway through.
You come for me, Varpio. My friends get you back.
Wait a minute. Are you declaring Linda your friend? I think she's my friend.
Oh.
Should we ask her?
Uh-oh. I think suddenly you're mute. I think our microphone's not working anymore because I have control.
This is so high school.
Okay. So, Linda, I'm going to get to what it is about PIF that bothers me. So to do that, though, let's start at some basic principles, right? So this is not a research paper, so we're not going to go through methods. So I'm going to try to summarize the argument in this paper as quickly as I can and using the most straightforward language I can to try to make this accessible. So first, though, let's start with some definitions. What is professional identity formation? So PIF is the process through which physicians acquire their professional identity. Fine. In other words, it's the process of internalizing the characteristics, the values, the norms of the profession, which has the end result of having these individuals think, act, and feel like a physician, like the clinical professional. So then, clinician educators are tasked with the job of helping learners develop their identities, their professional identities, and integrate that identity into themselves. This work then has two foci, right? One is to help that professional identity at the level of the individual. So the focus is psychology, right? It's on the level of the individual. The second is to help the learner develop their professional identity as part of collective, as part of a social group that we call physicians or nurses or whatever clinical specialty you're in. So it's about socialization, helping the person become part of the profession's social structure. So it's no wonder that research in PIF has two branches, right? Has two orientations. One, looking at the unique individuality of each person who's becoming, we're going to talk about physicians today. So each person who's becoming a physician. We see a lot of that work in undergraduate medical education. Reflective writing is used often. Fine. The other stream of research has looked at the social aspects of PIF. This work has highlighted how identities are co-constructed through interactions with social settings, through language, and it's not limited to just the individual's cognition. If you're looking for work in this space, you have to read the work by Lynn Monroe and Charlotte Reese. Just gorgeous, gorgeous work. Okay, fine. But here comes the problem. Both these ways of thinking about PIF is about the individual fitting into molds that are pre-described, predefined by the profession. In both these ways of thinking, our field has said that the autonomous individual learner is expected to take on the language, take on the demeanor, take on the profession. They fit our mold. Let's stop there. What do you think of this argument so far? Does this sound right? Is this how you have understood PIF as it is currently discussed in our field? This time I'm going to go John in hopes of keeping you short, then Jason, then Linda.
Just for that. I'd like to start with my 7-point rebuttal. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That we have a prescribed way that you can take on the mantle of your clinical role. And it's that way. And when you are outside of that for ways that are unique to you, or when you're outside of ways of the dominant way that that's shown, and that can happen in very negative valence, you are not part of the dominant structure that we see historically in medicine or in other places, then you feel othered. And so, yeah, we this is a great way of structuring this conversation.
Thank you, John.
Spectrum means words to me.
I don't have anything else to add.
What? Jason, I'm sorry, your microphone must be broken? What?
No, I'm just being efficient. I don't have anything else to add. Yeah.
All right.
Samuel, you can cut this out, my part out.
No, the question is, Samuel, why is it that Jason has not taken the opportunity to take a microphone? This is scary.
I know, this is frightening. Because John has a hard stop.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, I'm actually trying to figure out whether when one goes from the periphery to the center, legitimate peripheral participation towards the center of a community of practice, you don't have to completely get rid of your own identity. You just add on to it the identity of the profession. I guess your question is there one identity to a profession? And the answer to that is a clear and resounding no.
Right. So I agree with you. The idea that there should be one mold is a problem.
Yeah.
I knew you couldn't not say something. Jason, go for it.
I was trying to be so good. I was going to let somebody else say that, but
right
when they said that.
So here comes the radical revision that these authors are proposing. They want to push beyond this focus of they fit our mold, and they want us to think about subjectification. What on earth is subjectification? Let's see if I can help with that. First, subjectification, I'm going to tell you what it's not. It's not about competencies. It's not about qualifications learned to acquire. It's not about skills or knowledge to be learned. All right? It's not about socialization. It's not about adopting the profession's norms. Instead, subjectification is about the possibilities that are available to the individual who's becoming a doctor. It is what you're free to do. It's about what you're not free to do. It is what doctors are and can be and can do. If identity is about who I am as a doctor, subjectification is about what can I do as a doctor. If identity asks you to take on the role of a doctor and figure out what that means for you, subjectification is asking, what is it like to be a doctor in the world? What resistance do you face? What is it easy to do? If identity shapes learners as objects who are to be formed into molds, into doctors, subjectification sees learners as having agency and freedom and responsibility. Subjectification says that learners have the possibility to emancipate. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling the soapbox. To emancipate from the social structures of the profession and develop their own way of being a doctor. If focus on identity as learners asking, who am I? Subjectification asks, how am I? How do I exist in the world? What can I do with my identity as a doctor? I think I know you can't tell, but I think it's a very exciting shift in our way of thinking. I know, I hide it well. because it's empowering. It brings agency to the conversation. It's about how do I exist as a physician and what can I do with this identity? This could really change the way we think about becoming a doctor. It asks us as a field to worry less about our learners fitting a mold and worry more about socializing learners to be one, to harness what it is, and to figure out what that means for them. So that changes our role as educators. It's about teaching students how to act in the world as a doctor. What are you free to do? What responsibilities do you have? What limitations do you want to contend with? And here comes the best part. And now what do you want to do about that? Right? It's gorge. Okay, I'm going to let you go because it's fantastic. Let's go. Linda, Jason, John.
So I love what you just said. It brings me back to a paper that Dick and Sylvia Cruz and Yvonne Steiner wrote called something like Amending Miller's Pyramid to include identity formation, where they put at the top of the pyramid, instead of do, they added another little triangle, which is be, which is that traditional thing. But I would say, from what you said, that there is an upside-down pyramid on top of that pyramid, because it's not a very small triangle of being. It's getting much bigger because there are individuals there, and each individual will have his or her own way of being and how they will be. So I think maybe it's time for another paper. I'll suggest that to the authors, where we put one pyramid upside down on top of another.
Okay, you lost me with the upside down pyramids, but that's okay. I'm going to come back to
Can I
what
just
Lara
jump in
said.
for a second?
Yeah.
Can I just jump in and say that we've come to the end of the space-time continuum of HPE because we're now triangles on triangles, which is we've run out of space-time.
Love it. I appreciate the clarification of this paper and trying to distill it down. I just stole that from Linda. I totally stole that. Linda's real mad. You can't see her on the camera, everybody. But I still don't get this concept. In fact,
Shut the front door.
No. I reread this whole chapter. Like there's that paragraph where it defines subjectification, and you're a nice little rant there, and it's filled with contradictions. In fact, I put it all in ChatGPT.
Oh God!
And it just said doesn't compute, and so
you did not put it in GPT.
No, but I wish I did. Listen, they had the argument. They had me with them. Like, here's our concept. Here's our ruling paradigm. Here's arrival of PIF. Here's where PIF comes from. Here's its epistemology and its ontology. And then they tried to define their new concept. Lost me. It's unfortunate. It's really not accessible. I'll just give you an example of a contradiction. If identity is about who I am as a doctor, then subjectification is what I can do as a doctor.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like an interior thing to me at all. That sounds like competencies do.
No, it's a different thing.
And then it says it's also about what you cannot do.
It's a different thing.
So now I'm just a little lost.
No, but I think of it as a subject, as a person in the world, a role. All right. Sorry, John, you go ahead.
That's PIF. Right there, that's PIF.
Oh.
What you just said. Role in the world.
So I want to make a statement which is in support of your of what's so important in this paper, because the quick version, if you slice it fast, will have people having strong antibodies. It's not that generational phenomenon of kids these days. They don't do it. They want to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what I'm saying to my kids all the time. They're not saying that. They're not arguing that the competencies necessary for practice as a physician are going to be ad hoc or individualized across the spectrum. That's not what they're saying. What they are saying, though, is how you manifest and understand and articulate who you are as a doctor. You need to have space for it. Now, I agree with Jason's point that they set up the argument in a way to make it as confusing as possible. They introduce all this idea about what is learning, what is education, and I'm like, well, I'm disagreeing with all this. And then they bury the lead, essentially what they do. But when they get to that middle section about what subjectification is, I was like, the lights come on for me. The focus of our education is not to imprint one way of seeing or knowing onto our learners, where they are the object, the objectification of our education as clinician educators. Rather, we should think of them as subjects where they get to initiate how they understand and appreciate and engage with things, and where they stand in that is unique to them. The idea is that you experience education. You experience teaching, you just don't have it done at you, and you don't have somehow an upload of what is right behavior, right understanding, a unified way of experiencing. And I think that's really important, particularly when they make the leap then to what does it mean in your identity as a clinician. So I think it's an important way. It is not accessible in the way that they argue it. Because if you're going to get the so what part, it gets lost a little bit in what they have. I think the way you've articulated, Lara, brings it a little bit more to the forefront. And hopefully that's the value of what this second order review, this podcast is doing, trying to parse and to make that connection for people that have a tough time struggling through this chapter.
Like me.
John, I really like the way you summarized that. I think you did a really great job. Thank you for that, because I think you're on point. This chapter is really important. It labels something for me that was really bothersome. It gave me a language, the language of subjectification to hold on to. And I think this opens up a lot of possibilities, right? One of the things that we're seeing more and more in the literature about PIF is that when learners have different kinds of experiences in their learning trajectory, and things like shame, things like struggle, these sorts of really negative things can happen. And what that does then is that and those negative things could be as much as like having a failure, right? Like, because, we're in education, you're supposed to find the edge of your competence. But then, if you fail, that's in many spaces, that's not acceptable. And so what this does then is provide a language it's when that happens. And for the learners, there's a great body of literature that's going to come out soon about how it fractures their identity. We break them a little bit because they feel not good enough, not competent, that I don't belong here. There's something wrong with me. When they don't align with the mold, nobody has been saying to them, the mold's broken. We've been saying to them, you're broken. And so what subjectification is starting to say is saying, no, the mold is malleable and you get to push back. You get to force on it. And the thing that was bothering me before is that very unidirectional way of thinking. The mold was set and you're expected to fit. But what this language of subjectification is saying is actually there is a professional identity. There is a way of thinking and being of a doctor. There's a language around it. There's identities and socialization, but you have agency. You get to decide how you are going to be a subject, how you are going to be this doctor. And I love this. I love this. I love this. Go ahead, Chase.
So, your passion is inspiring. I love the idea of anything that helps a human being have agency and helps them to have the autonomy to carve out their way in the universe. That's all very attractive. I still don't see the distinction that these authors are trying to make between PIF and anything else. All of those things still relate to PIF. And by the way, the reference you just made to literature about fracturing, like there's a great paper by Stella Yu at YIU, it's in Advances, that talks exactly about that for people as they migrate into practice. This paper, though, doesn't clearly articulate the difference, and that's what I'm struggling with.
Linda, you had something you wanted to add, friend?
I think it does in some way. A couple of maybe historical bits of information. When we were writing our first paper and looking at personal identity becoming professional identity, we got pushback and realized that it actually was personal becomes personal and professional. One does not replace the other. The second comment I want to make is you're talking about all the negative things that can happen to people along the way. There's also positive things. Mm-hmm. There's,
Good point.
Yeah. And I don't think we should think of it all as negative to develop an identity. It's not all a struggle.
I agree. That's a great point, Linda. Thank you. John, do you want to add 2 cents before we go to voting? No 2 cents from John. I find that very hard to believe.
That's shocking.
Right? It's almost as shocking as you not having 2 cents earlier, but that's okay, friends. We're going to move on to our round of voting. And just to prove how completely unuseful this tool is, we're going to skip over the first set of votes because there's no methods. And look, now if you skip one, it doesn't.
Now I want to use my 2 cents, right?
Now your tool's broken because you're skipping questions. Now we have to clean the data.
Just because you call it a book chapter, you could call this a special issue of a synthesis on applied
We could also call this a special issue you have.
My point, if we're going to critique narrative reviews in some way, why are you not critiquing this? It's about the same length.
Because they didn't push it up as a review.
Okay.
They wrote a book chapter to address a topic. It's not a lit review. They didn't present it as a lit review, and that's fine.
Okay, can we vote on it in terms of its organizational arrangement and the clarity of its logic? Because I have a couple of votes around that.
No, we can vote on it on educational impact. No, educational impact.
All right.
1 to 5.
Yeah.
Jason, Linda, John.
I really struggle with this. If I understood the concept better, they get full marks for trying to move us along. Okay, I'm getting an eye roll from Lara. I'm trying to explain my low score. I don't think this will have a huge educational impact because it's not accessible. When the When I Say comes out in medical education, maybe it'll change the world. But
So was this a first past the post?
This is a 2.
Okay. Linda?
So I think this is at least a 3, and I could be persuaded to do a 4. I love the ideas that came up in this. I struggled with the paper, and I agree with Jason. It's not terribly accessible for the regular run-of-the-mill emergency doctor. But I think for those of us who may be more serious thinkers in the area, that it actually adds something and starts to push us to think in a slightly different way. So I'm going to give this a 4. And by the way, I am going to give it a 3 for methods.
Okay.
That we're not supposed to be doing.
That's fine, Linda. I don't obey the rules with the voting either. Go ahead, John.
So I've been this joke, and this is came up to me as I was reading it. It was like reading about socialization, subjectification. All I could think then was saponification, which is the organic chemistry thing for making soap. It's and my punchline is this is not written for a general health professions education audience. This, you know what, you convinced me, Lara, that this is a book. They wanted to write an argument, and this is a book about applied philosophy.
Yeah.
But the people that are going to read applied philosophy in HPE, I think, are a subset of a subset. And so for that group, I think this is a really meaningful contribution. And so I'm going to give it a 4 because I think it changes the narrative on how we represent PIF. And I think it's really important to do it. But
thank you, John.
For the general audience, no. But for the general audience, it needs a translation.
How do I mute him? No.
It needs a translation. It needs a second order review in order to make it accessible. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we do?
But still.
I'm going to give this paper a 5, obviously.
What?
I think it's fantastic.
Wow.
It has changed. It labeled something that was bothering me. It provided me with a language to deal with it. And maybe I'm part of the subset of the subset of the subset. I loved this. I thought it was fantastic. I can't wait to talk about subjectification in my next PIF article and I am sorry to whoever it is I will be working with next on my PIF article. So
note to self, turn down that email.
But Lara, you said you were going to do a presentation on PIF. And my concern is that if you bring up this concept in a presentation to a general audience, I must agree with Jason and John on this.
Lose the audience.
You're going to get more than eye rolls. You might get some loud snores.
I see the gauntlet dropped. I will pick that up. I will very happily do it. Wait for it. I'll post it on the Twitter when I give the talk. I'm sure you're invited. I will make it happen. It's going to be gorge. And so with that, dear friends and our long-suffering listeners, we are like episode 8. So long-suffering may not be that long. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today. We hope that this conversation was invigorating for you. It certainly was for me. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. You can always reach out to us on the Twitter. We're also at thepaperspodcast.com. Did I just make that up?
No, that's good.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's good. You actually got that right and the rest of us didn't. So we're well done.
It is thepaperspodcast.com, right?
Yeah.
Oh. Victory. And so with that, everybody, we appreciate your time. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
Take care, everybody. Especially Adam Sawatsky, who writes in this area. I want to hear what Adam says.
Yeah, no doubt.
You've been listening to the Papers Podcast. We hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend, Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers Podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.
Can we see that we are 2 minutes ahead of time? I'm just saying, Varpio closes it for the lead.
You know what? If you have a non-substantive paper, it goes faster. I agree with that.
And we're done with him. Okay.